Hello. Everyone can hear me well? Okay. So we are going to talk today about tips and tricks for building international Windows Store applications, Windows 8 applications in general, which whether it will be hosted in the store or line of business application, it doesn't matter. And so application is about communications. You need to communicate information to your users and get input from them. And the communication is done using text, images. The text and images are put on a certain layout. You can use video, you can use audio. All of that can be used to convey information. And people actually talk different languages. And apparently I've done the same session in North America, and they didn't know that other people speak different languages, apparently. And the session was about 10 people interested in localizing applications. So how many here, English is not his first language? Yeah. So apparently the rest of the world doesn't speak English. Some speak it as a second language, and some doesn't speak it at all. So here I don't speak Spanish, so I'm struggling to communicate. Arriba, okay, but it's my fault. We should learn about other cultures, and as application developers, we should care about providing the best experience for our audience, and a critical part of this is speaking their local language. So with Windows 8 comes a great opportunity for application developers. If you're building a Windows Store app, you have a huge reach to 200 plus countries, people speaking 60 plus languages, and developers can submit from over 120 countries, and payment can be done using local currency in 70 plus regions, which is a great feature for selling the app, so the users will not care about exchange or different. It will be predictable and easy to use and buy your application from Windows Store and with their local currency. The thing that made not all applications use localization because it was traditionally hard. Okay, although you have platform support, tool support, but still you have to do a lot of manual work to actually manage that translation workflow, how to get the resources from a language to another language. All of that has vastly and greatly improved in Windows Store applications, both on the API level and also on the tooling level. So by the end of this session, we can see how we can localize an app in less than a minute or two. Okay. So in this session, we'll discuss both HTML and XAML. We'll not go into discussion which is better because sometimes you need to use HTML, sometimes XAML is better. So we will discuss both how to localize the application in both HTML applications and XAML applications. So as we discussed that technical challenges, we need to localize text, we need to localize file resources, we need to tweak the UI for different languages. Different languages have different width of characters, height of characters. You have languages that are RTL, right to left and left to right. All of these we need to cater and think about when we are building international applications. So for strings, this is the most basic task we will do. In HTML, we store string resources in a file format called res.json, which is basically a JSON file, okay, like any JSON files submitted over the internet. And it just needs to be named as resources.res.json so that the platform can automatically pick it up. You can have your custom resource files. You can name it errors or whatever, but you will be responsible for loading the resources and binding them to the UI. If you need automatic loading, you have to use the naming convention resources.res.json. The resources are stored in key value pairs. So you have a key that will be used inside your code, and the value is your actual string value in your local language. And the convention for that is to put the res.json files in an ISO formatted language code file. So for English US, it will be in a folder called en-us. For Spanish in España, it's es-es, de-de, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is the convention for storing your res.json files, so the platform can pick it up easily. To actually bind to the UI, the binding format is data dash. How many of you already built HTML applications for Windows 8? Okay, so if you're familiar with Windows 8 development, all the custom attributes for HTML start with data dash win dash. Okay, so for resources, the attribute will be data dash win dash res, and it's a JSON format. You bind a property to a resource ID. So, for example, you need to bind the text of a div. You'll bind it using either text content property or inner text. They are equivalent. The thing that you need to consider is that the property name cannot be a reserved JavaScript keyword. So if you want to bind the class, the CSS class, to a resource, you have to do it using the class name property instead of using the class, or it will break. And you need, in your initialization code, invoke a method called winjs.resources.processAll. This is required just one time per page to load the resources and bind it to the UI. If you need to get a string programmatically, you need to call winjs.resources.getString and give it the resource ID. You will get a property with where you have two properties, name and value. With the value, you can get the resource value. If you need more advanced operations, like specifying a specific language or culture, specifying some attributes, you will do that using the resource manager and the resource context. These classes is a little bit more tricky to initialize and use than the resource getString, but gives you a lot more power. With XAML, how many of you built already Silverlight or WPF applications? Oh, perfect. So in Silverlight and WPF, we used to use resx files, okay? In XAML, it's called resw, which is basically the same schema as resx, but with different extensions. So you can get, if you already have a Silverlight or WPF application, you can get your resource files and rename it to ResW, and it will work without any issues. Okay. To be auto-loaded, you will also need to name it resources.resw, okay, and using the same folder and file name convention. To bind it, in Silverlight and WPF, we used to use the resource binding. In Windows 8, we use UID. UID option was available also in WPF, okay, but it was not used commonly. So in Windows 8 application, you out of the box, all you have is the X:UID. How you do that in your control, you name an attribute called X:UID and give it the resource ID. And in your resource files, you will put the resource ID dot the property name. So if you need to bind the text, you can use hello.text. Okay, hello is the resource ID, text is the property name, and you can do the binding this way. So in the control itself, you will get only the UID. All the other information will be put in the resource file. You will not be limited only to text resources. Any resource that can be have a built-in converter, for example, colors. If you can bind the background color and put the color in either in hex format or named color, like exactly what you do in XAML, and it will be automatically converted. Unfortunately, the built-in tooling does not have support for custom converters, but there is a workaround for that. You will implement a custom resource loader and do traditional binding, and then you can get a custom converter. Okay. You can bind attached properties also, but you have to take care of the syntax. It's a little bit tricky. You put it in resource ID dot the full qualified name of the attached property. So, for example, for grid.column, you can see it's resource ID dot square brackets using colon windows.ui.xaml.controls grid.column. Okay, but then you can bind any attached properties. It can be useful if you are implementing custom behaviors or so. Who's excited about behaviors coming back to Blend and Windows 8.1? You know about that? This is the thing that made my life a lot easier when building international applications. Anyone here have already used multilingual app toolkit? You never heard about it? You should. If you're building international applications, you have to use the multilingual app toolkit. It's amazing. So what it does is manages the translation workflow, manages a lot of the hassle you need to do to copying the resource IDs from your language resource to another language resource. It can even automatically generate machine translation. It's based on XLEF file format. Anyone here know about XLEF? So XLEF is an XML standard by Oasis for localization. It's used by huge companies, have third-party tools to manage the translation. It doesn't only, like ResJSON or ResW, store the data, resource and key and value. It also holds the workflow. It has a lot of metadata, so you can define a workflow. This resource key is new, need to be translated, need to be reviewed. Okay, it's done. It has been modified. Okay, so with tooling, it's a great tool for managing the collaboration of the translation process. Okay, so it's not just a technical file format, it's also for implementing the process of the translation action. Multilingual App Toolkit has this feature of pseudo-language. Pseudo-language was a feature of Windows 7 that lets you see your UI in still a readable format, but adding all the diacritics, expanding the length of the text. So, for example, the text can be very well seen in English, but when translated into German with all of the expansion, the text will be cut off, all of that. So you need to cater for each and every language. Instead of that, you can use the pseudo language. The pseudo language will give you a good idea about how your application will look like in other languages. Okay. So I think enough talk, and let's see a demo. So this is a XAML application. I'm not sure why it's blinking. Do I need to do anything? Okay. So, oh. Do I need another? I have mini display. And I also have VGA. Sorry about that. Okay. So this is a Hello World type of application. It has nothing but some text blocks. The text block here, you can see that I'm only specifying the UID. And here I have the language file. It can be named anything. It can be named language, can be named strings. It doesn't care. The important thing is the structure of the language files. Okay, so this is ISO language codes. So this is the ResW. If you opened it in an XML editor, you will find it's exactly resx file. So here I'm having the UID dot property name and foreground and the text. Okay? Without any issues, I can now run the application. Okay, Bill. I have all my information coming from the resource file just by specifying the x:UID. So how the application determines the UI language? Traditionally, in Windows applications, it was coming from the regional settings, and it's only had one language and then the fallback language. With Windows 8, it's more interesting. So you have language preferences. And with language preferences, you can set a prioritized list of your preferred languages. And the system will try to to match the language preference using a heuristic process. So it will load the best resource for your application. Okay, so it's really more interesting to get the application, and also a little bit tricky for developers. So, for example, I was writing an application that will be localized in Arabic, and Arabic has the flow direction right to left. So the default value is left to right without any issues. So I did only specify in the Arabic resource file the flow direction. And when I'm testing, it was not an issue because I've always had Arabic in my language preferences. But when I tried it on a machine that didn't have Arabic in the language list, the application crashed. That's because the default language didn't have this property. So it found a property that didn't find any place to get it from. Okay, so always don't depend on default values. Always have your default language containing all the information. Okay, you can change the default language from not from the UI. You have to open the project file. Here is the default language is ENUS. If you prefer that your default language is another language, you need to specify it here. So it will be the fallback language. And the fallback languages need to have all the resources defined in it. So with multilingual app toolkit, traditionally, if I have an English resource file, I have to copy the resource ID and then resource by resource copy it to Spanish, German, Arabic, whatever the language we're going to support. A lot of copy and pasting will be taking place, and you can forget to copy and paste in a language file. It was a mess. So right now, if you Multilingual App Toolkit is a third-party tool. You need to download it, and when you download it, you will find in your tools menu, enable Multilingual App Toolkit. Let's select the project. Enable Multilingual App Toolkit. Okay, so Multilingual App Toolkit is available for Windows Store apps and Windows Phone apps also. It's not limited only to Windows Store apps, and it's available for HTML and XAML. When you enable multilingual toolkit, you will get a multilingual resources file folder, and by default, you will get only the QPS-plog file. Okay, the QPS plog is actually the name of the pseudo language that we discussed. So now let's try to add a resource. So let's have a new resource. The text. Hello, TechEd. Okay. Now, if I just build the project, if I open the XLF file, you will find it in a tool, and you will find your resource copied automatically into the XLF file, and its status is new. So you see it has also the metadata with it. You can actually right-click and here what I did right now by clicking the translate, it generated the pseudo language text that I talked about. Still, you can read it as Hello TechEd. All of you can see the Hello TechEd part. So here, the text still here, okay, but it's expanded and added some diacritics, so you can ensure that your UI will look pretty much the same on other languages that have expanded character set or height of characters. Pretty cool, huh? So to test with pseudo language, you have from the language preference add a language. And it will not be in the list. You have to search for QPS-plog. You have to specify the full name. Any other characters will be. So adding it. And in the language preferences, you need to move it up. Okay, so it will be this way. Okay, so you can see if your UI need to be a little bit tweaked. Okay, so here to actually display the text, we'll need to add a text block. And give it XUID equals new resource. And now running it, you will find that it will be displaying the pseudo language translation. Here it is, but it's a little bit small. I need to expand. you will find it here on the left. Okay. Now I can translate it, generate machine translation. Okay, it will contact Bing translator. So if I did my language preference, moved up the Arabic language, you'll see it will automatically, it didn't. Okay, I will check it out, but it will should automatically get the text, and also specify it as right to left. Here it did the translation, but it actually translated it as hello lunatic in Arabic. I'm not sure why, but this is about the that would be funny. Yeah. The machine translation, we just did try it, so I write it hello TechEd, hello crazy one in Arabic. أهلا مختل عقليا, which is a very bad word to say. Huh? But it's good for what? So what I usually do is just to start. When we're testing, we start with the machine translation. Okay, so I will repeat the question. The question is about how reliable the machine translation is, and the answer is sometimes it's pretty good, and sometimes it's really bad. So live right now, it had a very bad translation from Hello TechEd to it's supposed to be a very simple phrase, but in Arabic it translated to something offensive. Okay, that should be really bad. So I start with machine translation, and then either if I don't have someone to review, I go back to Bing and try to translate the machine translated language into the original language and see if it picks up the same word. So it gives me a pretty good idea about the quality of the translation. And of course, the best choice is to have someone that will actually review the translation that reads the local language. Okay, but it's very interesting for testing and starting the application.
You did the translation with. Thank you. You did the translation with your multilingual tool and generate some multilingual resources. Now the system is using what? These multilingual resources or the file you have in languages?
So, when this is, I've only done it for demo. So, what you should have is only the multilingual resources. Okay, so I should remove these files, not to confuse the system. And this is maybe actually the issue that made the resources not picked up. So here I have also the resources, so it didn't pick up the resources in xlif file. Okay, so what you should have is remove this from the project, and only use the multilingual app toolkit resources. Okay, not to confuse the system. And of course, because with multilingual, so here it is. So when we removed the ResW file, it picked up the resources from the xlef file. If there is an xlef and ResW, it will use the ResW.
It did that automatically, or it's because you have the multilingual tool installed on your machine?
What?
It takes automatically the multilingual resources, or it is because you have the multilingual tool installed on your machine?
You have to have the multilingual app toolkit installed. Okay, because actually Windows 8 uses some file format called PRI files. Okay, so all the ResW or ResJSON or xlef at the end is compiled into PRI files. So converting the xlef or ResW is done by the compiler, and to do it from xlef, you have to have the multilingual app toolkit installed on the machine.
Thank you.
So, yeah, there is a question.
Does it mean that all my clients has to have a multi-language pack installed?
Developers.
Only developers.
Developers. Okay. It's only a development machine, a development tool.
Yeah.
So, then next challenge we have is localizing images and file resources. So before we have to have some manual process to actually get them, the file resources. With Windows Store apps, also it has in mind pretty good support for files. So automatically, if you followed the same convention by putting your file resources into language code files, the system will automatically load these files from the proper language resource. Okay, so this applies to images, audio, video, and even scripts or XAML files. Okay, so for HTML apps, you can have specific logic for a specific culture, and also you can have specific CSS for specific culture, or XAML resource dictionaries for a specific culture. Okay, which is brings you a lot of flexibility, and the resource heuristics is not only limited to languages, but also for scales and contrasts. Okay, so scales speaks about the DPI of the machine. So if you have a big screen with low resolution, okay, it will pick up the low DPI version. Okay, that should be the 100 version. And then if you have like the Surface Pro 10-inch with a very high resolution and even higher resolutions, like the Samsung have resolutions higher even than the Retina display from Apple, you still can get contrast 140 and 180. So the application can have higher quality resources for higher DPI images. And also for accessibility, you can have high contrast images to enable accessibility for visually impaired people. If you need to load the files from your code in HTML and JavaScript, you can use WinJS.xhr, which is XML HTTP request. It's like the AJAX call from jQuery or anything. So you can use the WinJS.xhr to load the files. Okay, and from C# or VB or C++, you can use the storage file.get file from application URI async, okay, to get the file, and you cannot use relative URI. Okay, the URI must be specified in ms-appx URI format, so ms-appx colon triple slashes and the file path. Okay, and we will see it in the demo in a minute. And as I told you, the files is not limited to static files. You can store the scripts or resources or XAML files into resource-specific files. So this is really interesting when, for example, if you're building a game and in some countries the games cannot have violence or whatever, so you can have specific build for this country, but you have the same project file, okay, and also change the default language from the project file. And also, if you have, for example, if you have CNN US edition and CNN International edition, okay, you can have the same application, okay, for both, but only by changing the language in the build process, you will get different apps. So it gives you a lot of flexibility for that. And let's see a demo, hopefully. So this time we'll be demoing a JavaScript application. As we discussed, the language file need to be stored in JSON format. This is the REST-JSON format. It's encapsulated in curly braces, and you can see the key and value. And the key and value have to be in quotation marks in both the key and value. Without that, the compilation will fail. So if we have it here like this, if we try to compile, the compiler will complain that processing failed. Okay. And also we can use the multilingual app toolkit. And here in the home page, we can see that I have different pages. This is for AN-US, and this is for Arabic, Egypt. So in this home page, I have a span that is bound to text content to app title. Okay, and here you can see welcome. And the image file is a flag. Okay. So let's run the application. Now you can see that this is actually a different file. You can see I've written this is a totally different file. So here in the Arabic, here it is. If we change the language preference, and have English as the preferred language, you can see that I'm getting a different CSS file and a different layout, and actually the flag is coming from the file here. So let's have here the assets. Okay. So here in the images folder, you will see that I have the flags, and only I'm referring here as a relative URI images.flag, and automatically the system is loading the right file according to the resource. Okay. If we need to do this programmatically, I think. So this is how you can do it with code. With code, you cannot refer to the file using the same format we did in the HTML by relative resource. You have to refer it as ms-appx. Okay, so with Windows 8, you have custom URI resources. So you have ms-appx. If you have ms-appdata, you have ms-appx web. Each one has its usage. So to get something from the application package, you need to specify it with ms-appx colon triple slashes is short for omitting the full package name. Okay, so without the triple, you have to need to specify the full package name. So for short, use ms-appx triple slashes and refer to the file path, and the system will automatically get the right resource. Okay, and then you call windows.storage file .get file from application URI async and give it the absolute URI, and it will become a promise, a feature that you can use the file after all. Okay. So the next challenge is with dates, numbers, and currency. .NET traditionally has a great support for dates and numbers and currency using the culture info formatting. But now with Windows 8, we have the language preferences, and the things get more complicated. So instead of using, if you're building .NET application, instead of using culture info class, use Windows.globalization namespace, and in Windows.globalization namespace, you will find formatters for dates and calendars and times and numbers, any type of number, whether it's decimal numbers, percentage, currencies. Okay, so you need to change your code to actually use the Windows.globalization namespace. Okay, and it has great support for different numeral systems. So not all the languages use the Western Arabic numbering, but it can use other glyphs to present the numbers, and all of that will be handled by iNumber formatter options .numeral system to get the set of the proper set of glyphs to represent your numbers. Okay. Date time formatter, it can be challenging at first for .NET developers because it doesn't use the cryptic DD, MM, YY, whatever coding, but instead it uses long date, short date, or if you need to specify, you will see month, year. Okay, so it has a different naming convention for specifying the date format. Okay, and you can use it to both format dates and times, or parsing them back into whether it can be used either from JavaScript or C# or VB or C++. It's a WinRT API thing. General tips generally for building international applications. Always localize your application name, okay? Because in the store, with one of my applications, by just localizing the application name, I got almost double the downloads the second day from specific regions, because it shows you care about their culture, and they expect your application to be localized in their language. So it's pretty easy to do that with Windows Store apps. All you need to do is, instead of having in the AppX manifest, instead of specifying a static string as the application name, you need to specify ms-resource : resource ID. Okay, so it's very easy, and it will greatly impact your general user experience and what the user expects from your application. Try to respond to system language preferences changes. Okay, so if the user changes the preference, you can have an event listener, and you can prompt the user to either keep using the current language, or switch to the next language, to the language he changed. Okay. As I told you before, your default language resource file must have all the resources. You don't depend on having default values. Okay, always have, even if it's the default value, also put it into the default language file. A very, very good option that you can provide to your users is letting them override the system default languages. Okay, so sometimes the application, the user prefers to use the system in English, but your app, he will need it in his local language. So have the options in the settings, the application settings, to change the system preferences, okay, and the system default. And I will show you in a minute. It's very easy to do. Okay. Try to use online services that supports localization. For example, Bing Maps. Bing Maps can get the resource, the culture that you're requesting the maps in, and it will return localized values to you. Okay. So let's see the final demo. So this is a very basic, it's not actually a functioning app, but it's showing an app that just currency exchange rates for different languages, okay? For different cultures, for different countries, actually. So these set of languages, I'm loading automatically from the application file. So let's try now to see if we can. Right now, I have Arabic, Dutch, and French. So let's see if we can implement Spanish. So we right-click on the project and add translation language. Let's add Spanish. At the beginning, the file will be empty. But after building, you need to build the application to copy the resources into the XLF file. So now you can see that I have the default language, the English resources, copied into the Spanish resources. Now let's do a machine translation. Now run the application, and now in the options, I have list of languages that I support. Now I support Spanish. By changing Spanish, it's now displaying. Anyone here reads Spanish? Is this proper Spanish? Okay, it's good for a start. But right now you can see that the dates are properly translated into Spanish. We have here a Spanish, I'm not sure if it's proper or not, but it shows that we have something that looks like Spanish at least. Okay, and now we also have it in our list. Okay, all of that comes from the rich metadata that I can get from the API. So let's see how we did that. First, to get the application language, I can use the windows.globalization.application language.manifest language. Okay, this property will give me all the application language resources defined in my application package automatically, and this is how I'm populating the settings list. Here in manifest language, I'm iterating it to see which language is actually the language that's currently the system, the application language. So in the setting file, I can select it and highlight it. Okay. For the dates, I'm using the globalization date formatter. As I told you, to specify the date format, it's a little bit different than the culture info that we used to use in .NET. Okay, and just new date, the current date. Okay, and just process all. So let me show you the settings also. Here is also how I'm implementing the options list to let the user override the system default. So here I'm also getting the manifest languages. And the thing here is to use the globalization application languages primary language override. Okay, so if it's specified with a value, it will be the application resource will be defaulted into the primary language override. If it's empty string, it will use the system default. Okay, and this property will be remembered across application settings, so it will be automatically saved. Okay, so if the user specifies a language override, it will be always this override until you change this value. Okay, here I'm just binding the language list, and here when the user selects the code, I'm specifying the primary language override to the value of the text box, the list box, and doing a WinJS UI.pages.render, which is basically refreshing and reloading the file. So it will be automatically loaded instead of waiting till you close and reload the application. Okay. So to summarize, you can see the amount of effort that has been done inside the API and the tooling to make the localization process really, really easy for developers to build international applications. As you can see, we added a language in less than a minute from the developer point, and then we can the platform supports the translation process that's used by enterprises and it's actually enabling it for you as an individual developer. Okay, so here you can see I can right-click on the application and send the translation using an email or whatever to a translator to review it and send it back to me. Okay, and here I can import the translation from the translator. So it's really a great effort to enable easy implementation. So also let me show you how to localize the application name. To do that, in the package.appx manifest, here the default language, and in the packaging, not the packaging. Here you can see, instead of having a static text, I'm using just MS resource and a resource ID, and now your application will be displayed localized in the store, which is a really great feature. Okay, so I'm done with the presentation and open for questions and answers.
In the manner how you translated the title, it's possible also to translate description?
Yes, the title and description. They will be. The pain point is actually you cannot localize other the description inside for the store. So for the store, you will need still to put a lot of metadata and the screenshots. All of that. It will be painful submitting to the store. Hopefully, the store toolkit will have better support for that.
Thank you.
You showed us how to translate static strings. Now, when you have, for example, data coming from your application, you are 10 years old, and the 10 is coming from the application. How do you translate? How do you build this translation?
So it's coming from a web service, for example?
No, your application is showing some information from the database and building a string, building an information text. You are 10 years old, and 10 is data coming from the database or from something.
So if it's coming from the back end,
yes,
the back end, you still have to do your own implementation.
How do you there is not a way to set square brackets to use a string format, or how can you handle that?
To do the string formatting thing?
Yes, for example.
So you will have to do a custom binding in XAML, and in JavaScript also it will be a custom binding. No, there is no automatic support to have a placeholder and put it inside the string. Yeah.
Okay, and placeholders or this kind of is supported by the process all, or you have to build something?
No, you have to do it.
Okay.
So in .NET you have string.format. In JavaScript you don't have that. You don't even have string.format. So you need to use some implementation that use that for JavaScript, and HTML and XAML you need to use string.format.
I only want to ask if there is some support for similar example, if you have a number in the word, for example, 5 objects, 1 object, and you want to somehow define for your language the system of these words after a number. Is or on your side, or there is some kind of support?
No, in these situations, you have to do that in your view model logic. So if you're using MVM, whether in JavaScript or C#, you need to do that in the view model. Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you. And as I told you, it's a simple API call, WinJS.resources or Windows.resources.getString. Okay, but still, you have to do some code for that.
So this might be a strange question, but I would like to know if you can imagine using this mechanism of switching languages for switching teams. This is something that I'm missing, for instance, in ASP.NET MVC. And you showed out how you can separate the JavaScript files and CSS and everything into different folders based on which language is being used. And I was just wondering if this could be easily used for switching teams.
You can use the infrastructure by having some pseudo language codes, or if you know that you're going to use Spanish Argentinian resource files, for example, you can use it as a theme, ES-AR. It will be for the black theme or the white theme, and do it. But if you will do it, you will also lose the localization support. So if you specify the or you can, instead of using the primary language override, store it in a different key and use this key to do it. And as I told you, there is the resource manager. The resource manager can be used to load resources from a specific culture, okay, other than the default culture. So you can have a workaround to do that, yes.
Would you understand this as an hacky approach?
Yeah,
Okay.
But it should work. Yeah.
The multi-language tool you showed us, does it exist in a exe application we can install to someone else? For example, if you have a couple of people doing translations, can you distribute this tool for doing the translation, or how can you give the files without giving the whole solution to the translation people for doing the translations?
So I'm not sure if it will be installed without Visual Studio. I don't think so. But generally, XLIF is an industry standard. Okay, so there are many tools that can be used by professional translators to load XLIF and graphically edit it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so no more questions? Okay, thank you, and please don't forget to evaluate the session. And in my blog, www.silverlightrecipes.com, you'll find more information about some advanced topics about internationalization and dealing with resource files. Thank you.